Lord.
Hello. Hello. We are so happy to be here. We are the Three Black Docs. It's another Friday. You know what we do. I am with my girls, Dr. Karen and Dr. Tiffany. How's everybody doing? Good. So
Ready
we're
for
going to grab
Halloween.
our drinks and we'll be right back with you. All right, ladies. It is almost the end of October. How is everyone
Yes.
doing today?
Doing all right.
Doing all right. Doing all
Wearing
right.
orange. Wearing orange in
Wearing
celebration
orange
of
in
orange and
celebration.
black. It's Halloween
Okay.
tomorrow.
Oh, I see. I
Yeah, come
see.
on now. Come on, Z.
The
Did not
I
get it.
mean, it was like a little plural. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Tomorrow's the
And we
31st.
have a special guest, Dr. Tiffany. Can you describe what is happening?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. What is happening is I needed a little bit of happy.
Okay.
So I love Halloween. I love the fall. In normal times, this is a very happy time of the year for me. Halloween, my birthday is Scorpio season,
Mm.
fall weather. So, because I just needed some happy, I decided I was going to wear my Halloween costume, which is not going to make its street debut with my family tomorrow either, since we're not trick or treating. So, I figured I needed to
Ah.
wear it as much as possible. Now, I would show you the whole ensemble, but because of my handy dandy virtual background, I have no space, and this whole thing will topple like a deck of cards. But for the Harry Potter folks out there, this
Oh.
year I am Bellatrix Lestrange with my Voldemort wand, and just trust me, I have a whole ensemble here. And she is not making her trick or treating in the streets debut tomorrow, so she is debuting with the Three Black Docs and with our scavenger hunt. So thank you for allowing me to show up this way tonight, ladies.
It
Appreciate that.
It's all love.
Anytime.
It's
And
love.
while you're at it, why don't you tell us what you're drinking and what kind of cup you have?
Certainly. Well, I would say that I was drinking something super interesting, but it is just water. Because that is how tired I am from this week and this month. So just hydrating, just water. And this is a Mardi Gras cup from New Orleans, which is the best kind of cup to drink your water from, if you ask me, Dr. Z. Good old Mardi Gras cup. So that's what I
You are
got.
throwing shade on the water cups. I see. I see. Dr. Karen,
Mm.
I
Well,
know you can't top that presentation with
no,
the
and I'm not even gonna try. I'm not even gonna try, but I do have my water too. But
oh,
I was trying to make an old fashioned, but I don't know what I did. I screwed up my ratios, so I threw a little ginger ale in there as well. So I am drinking because my intention is to right after we're done is to go to bed, like for real,
yeah, I understand.
for
I
real.
understand.
Like
Well,
I
this
need to have my bonnet on right now, so I'm ready to go.
That could have been your Halloween costume.
Well,
well,
that's what I had it on. Look,
why
you
don't
want
you
me to put it
get
on?
your bonnet
Look, it's right here. Look, it's ready to
right?
go.
It
See? Okay,
the
I'm gonna put it on.
Corona
I'm gonna put it.
bonnet. There
How
you
about that?
go.
Oh shoot!
There
Hey.
you have it.
Mhm.
This
Put
is
it to
the
the side too, so it's cute.
oh,
Oh, now you look like who is
it's a
that?
Kango bonnet.
Rerun or Rise on
Uh-oh.
what's happening?
Oh, yeah.
And he was doing his little
That
what's
was
the dance
rerun,
he
right?
does?
Yeah, that was rerun.
Oh,
See
man.
what you drinking? Oh, should
Well,
I ask? I can't
I
even
am
ask. Never
back
mind.
to my water on the rocks with my red and white straw. It's a paper straw, guys. So, we're
Okay.
environmentally
Yeah.
friendly.
Hmm.
I'm not in a fancy Mardi Gras cup. I have just a
Goblet.
regular goblet.
Yes.
Goblet. Mm.
And,
I like
for work today, I had on just like a basketball jersey. But like Karen, after this, I will be taking it to bed. So it's a wonder I don't have on a nightgown right now. Now,
She said a wonder.
having said that, we have to talk about October before we get into family history.
Do we have to?
Okay. We do have to talk about October because as I was thinking about October, there's a lot that's happened. 2020 has been just a complete disaster overall. But
Hot mess.
let's talk about October. So, the first day of October was a full moon, right? So we'll start with that. In October, President Trump was diagnosed with coronavirus.
That seems like a long time ago.
That seems
It
like it was two
it
years
really
ago,
does.
right?
Yeah, it really does.
Coronavirus is still here and is getting worse.
Yep.
And it wasn't
The
just him, right? Was it 12
It was a
people?
lot of
Yeah,
people.
12,
everybody else.
13, 14?
A lot of
Anyway,
Every,
people.
right, the whole crew
everybody
was diagnosed
everybody
with
was diagnosed.
Rona. Everybody had Rona. There were also a lot of protests in Nigeria. I don't know if you guys heard
Yes.
about that.
Yes,
They've
Yep.
been having,
yes.
there's been some unrest there. We missed homecoming for our HBCUs, my alma mater, Grambling State. All our HBCU homecomings were canceled, so that's really sad. It is Breast Cancer and Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Tiffany,
Yes, ma'am.
October the 12th was National Gumbo Day.
No.
Came
Oh,
and went
what?
without not a shrimp in my mouth.
I'm ashamed to say that I
Nary a
did
shrimp.
not know that.
She said nary a shrimp.
I
And
am ashamed
and which is even
I
more telling for
publicly been
October.
shamed. Hey Z, this is a
Yeah.
question. Do you eat your
Uh-oh.
gumbo with potato salad in it?
I don't.
Potato
I
salad.
don't. I
In the
don't. I
gumbo?
don't. I don't. I know. I know. I'm
Okay,
still
we're
a
gonna
Northern
talk about that
Louisiana
later.
girl.
Excuse me,
Continue.
I
for the
don't.
not
I
no, no,
don't.
no, no, for the
I don't.
non-Louisianas, you're gonna have to explain that. Because how you gonna put
She's trying to
potato salad in the
that's
she
what
showing off.
Don't knock
mhm.
it till you tried it.
Okay.
Especially when you got good potato salad.
When you
Continue.
have good potato salad, that's true.
Okay.
Having said that about October, October the 19th was a very important day that also came and went. It was National Evaluate Your Life Day.
Oh, snap.
And
When was that?
clearly, that was not done on my part. So just so you know, we might need to go back and revisit October the 19th with
The
National
19th. Okay.
Evaluate Your Life Day.
Mm,
All right. And so the end of October ends with a full moon.
mm.
Yeah.
So this is,
Yes,
a blue
fascinating.
moon month. So it just lets you know that even the skies know something is going on.
Mhm.
Importantly, the last time I did a live, Chadwick Boseman died. We found out that he died right after the live. So that was incredibly sad.
Mhm.
And, you know, it, there were lots of conversations about cancer and cancer prevention. And it was this month, actually, on October the 14th, that his brother told us that he also had been diagnosed with cancer
Wow.
and was in remission for 2 years. So I don't know what
Wow.
kind of cancer he was diagnosed
Mhm.
with, but just the fact
Okay.
that Chadwick Boseman was diagnosed with colon cancer at such an early age. His brother, I'm assuming just from the pictures, he did not look like he was very old at all, also diagnosed with cancer and 2 years in remission. I mean, we really just can't stress enough the
Mhm.
importance of knowing your family history and knowing what kinds of things run in your family. So, really, the goal for today is to talk about family history. And, this is a really important topic. One of the things that I found out, goodness, just a few years ago was that my grandmother died from ALS. So
Wow.
Oh,
I actually
So
thought she
ALS
had.
is?
Mhm.
Mhm.
ALS is also called Lou Gehrig's disease. I'm not
Right.
going to give you
The
the
long
amyotrophic
like
lateral
right.
sclerosis
sclerosing.
one,
Right.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I
Yeah,
meant. Lou Gehrig's disease, yes.
right. And so this is a neurologic disorder, but I thought she had Parkinson's. And so I
Hmm.
remember it was, believe it or not, it was through a Facebook post.
Hmm.
And my cousin was put something up that said, "Oh, my grandmother during the ALS challenge. Do you all remember that?"
Yeah, with the ice
Yes,
Yeah,
the
bucket.
cold
yeah,
press.
and
Yeah.
it
But
was
yeah.
like, "This is in honor of my grandmother." And I was like, "But she
Hmm.
didn't have ALS."
Mm,
And but yes, she did.
mm,
So I was actually pretty embarrassed that I didn't know what my own grandmother had. And so, really, it's really high time for us to know what's going on in our families. And so, Dr. Tiffany, when we talk about family history, what does
Mhm.
that mean to you?
Well, it means to me, well, the easy answer is just knowing what's going on with your family. But the
Right,
longer question is like, what do we mean? Because you start talking about family, right? And it's
right,
like, I have my second cousin
right,
over here that had something, and does that count? Or, this cousin twice removed, does that count? So, I think what I would like to put out there is, in general, when we talk about that, we're talking about degrees,
hmm,
in your relatives. So like first degree relatives, second degree relatives,
right.
and third
And your
degree relatives,
right.
right?
And so
So
your first
that's
degree
what,
relatives
right.
are
Your parents, you think about it as the people that are like closest to you. So your
right.
parents, your siblings, your kids. Those are first degree relatives. And let us know in the chat if you've heard of this. Like if you've heard of this before, like a first degree, a second degree relative outside of like, your second cousin twice removed and that kind of thing. This is what
Right.
we're talking about when we're saying know what your family history is in terms of trying to determine if there's any increased risk of cancers in your family. So truly the most important part is your first degree relatives and your second. So first degree, again, if you think about, closest to you, when we chart this out, is the people who would like touch you, on a chart.
Mhm.
So your
Mhm.
parents, your siblings, your
Mhm.
kids, is your first degree.
Mhm.
Then your second degree relatives would be kind of like the next layer of people, if you think about it that way. So that would be your grandparents, for example, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, and if you have like any half siblings, right? So these are the kind of people that you want to know about. Now, depending on how large your family is, some of us have lots and lots of aunts and uncles. I do too. And so now you might be talking about actually a good number of people, right?
Right.
Um, and so I think that also just speaks to the importance of people needing to talk and really exchange that information. Interestingly, because I didn't realize this until I like learned it medically, but your first cousins come as your third degree relatives in terms of this,
Right.
right? So
Right.
your third degrees are like your greats, great grands, great aunts, uncles, and then your first cousins. So again, if you're like me and you've got over 30 first cousins, things can get
It can get pretty tricky.
it can get pretty tricky. And so you can see how this information can get lost or buried or, depending upon how big your family is. What is funny is I'm an only child. So you would think that I don't actually have that much um, opportunity for a family history since I'm an only child. I don't have, siblings. I don't have nieces and nephews that are related to me, not through marriage, but not to me. But I have a whole lot of aunts and uncles and a whole lot of first cousins, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so it's a little bit more complicated than you would imagine off the top being an only child.
Right. And Dr. Karen, why is family history so important? One of the reasons why we started this podcast is because we are concerned about the health of our Black community.
Yeah.
And so, why is family history so important?
Well, I think first of all, we don't talk enough about health and well-being in our families. I mean, that's the first thing. So some of it's just around having those conversations so that we can hold each other accountable to certain things. But we do know that certain diseases have a family predisposition, and it doesn't matter if it's high blood pressure or diabetes or cancer. Really important to know whether or not your parents or your siblings have those because it may put you at higher risk. And so if, for instance, you have a family member who does have some sort of medical problem, it really behooves you to go and make sure you get yourself checked. And that's why when you go to the doctor's office, that's one of the first things they do. They hand you a bunch of paper and you fill it out, including your own personal history. But they talk about your family history, and it's some one thing. I know, for instance, I had a friend of mine from church who he was 29 years old but had hypertension. He had really severe high blood
Mhm.
pressure where he had to take like 3 different medications, but he had a family history of it and a family history of high cholesterol, so hypercholesterolemia, right? So high cholesterol. And if he hadn't really known that and hadn't taken his health history, health serious, he would have been at very high risk of having stroke at an early age, right? Or
Right.
maybe having cardiovascular disease. So the fact that he had known that and sought medical attention and said, my family has this very strong history, he was able to find it really early, get on medications. He had to be very careful about what he was eating. But knowing our family history, it empowers us, frankly. It really allows us to then take our own health and well-being into our hands and say, okay, if I know that I'm at increased risk for high blood pressure, what are the things that I can do? If I know that I'm at increased risk for cancer, are there things that I can do to mitigate risk or to lessen that risk? And there certainly are for some cancers. And so it really is about having that power. Knowledge is key. It's really important.
Knowledge is absolutely key. And so, Dr. Tiffany was just explaining that really you need to know 3 generations, or you know 3 generations of your family on both sides. So you want
Mhm.
to know your mom's history and your dad's history, because both of those are incredibly important. And so what we're going to put on our Facebook page or website, there's a form from the American Medical Association that can just help prompt the discussion. And now that Thanksgiving and the holidays are coming up, I know you may not be able to physically meet with your family, but it's still a really good time to have those conversations about family history. And so you'll be able to download that form and just really use it as a guide. Because in some families, a lot of things aren't discussed. So Dr. Karen was talking about we need to know our family history, but what do you do if they don't want to talk about it? How do you get people to talk about what's going on with them? How can we get rid of these secrets that are going on in the family?
I have to
Mhm.
say, it's funny that, this is going to be a little bit of a side road, but, we started this off to talk about how to increase health, right?
Mhm.
And the last, I think, 2 times that we've gotten here, that we've come on live, it's taken the same turn, right? Of like how much we need to have these difficult conversations
Right.
within families. It seems like we would take really big steps as a community just tackling that issue,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah. And what was Tanya? So Tanya Hicks was a guest on one of our recent lives, and she deals a lot with making sure that people have the resources they need to support, um, making sure you have a living will, so that your desires for your health are made clear, but also and thinking about wills, etc. But that does require difficult conversation. And I can't remember, there was somebody who had posted, I don't know if it was in the chat, one of our viewers was talking about family secrets. What is it? Kills families or something like that. There
Hmm.
was some phrase, and I think the problem that I mean, this is real. It doesn't matter what the family secret is, and I think sometimes we need to just um, begin anew and say this is
Right.
a new day. And I think COVID is really opening people's eyes, right? Because there are individuals that I know. My uncle died of COVID. Now, he happened to be sick. He had some underlying medical issues. But can you imagine if, you didn't know that your family member had comorbidities and, you're exposing them, right? You might not have
Right.
known. And, just before everybody's wearing masks and stuff.
Oh,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Right.
How horrible would that be? But, I think I was very conscientious, for instance, for my mother-in-law who, is dealing with multiple myeloma right now, and she's going through that. So I remember when COVID first came up, I wouldn't even go down to visit her because I was very scared because I was in the clinic at the time of exposing.
Mhm.
but I knew what her history is. I know what she's going through. And so the challenge is that if we don't know what people are, what they've been through or what their current illnesses are, we may be putting people at risk too. I know it seems kind of ridiculous, but even with flu season and other things like that, we know that individuals who have certain comorbidities are at higher risk of having really bad complications from viruses, including the coronavirus, but also the flu. So it could be a way of even just saying, now in the COVID season, hey, family, why don't we have a conversation about health? Why don't we
Right.
have a conversation about family history so we can be clear-minded about how
Right.
we can protect, ourselves and each other?
Yeah, I love that idea, Karen, of knowing so that you're not unwittingly exposing someone that has a comorbid condition. Because I can, once the pandemic started, it was like the thought that I might expose, like I might pass this to someone else,
Mhm.
um, unknowingly, as an asymptomatic carrier was like almost worse than thinking that I would get sick. It,
Mhm.
it was
Right.
like, okay, if I get sick, I get sick. But like, if I
Right.
pass this on to somebody
Right.
that
Yes.
has some predisposing condition, because I'm not wearing a mask, or I'm asymptomatic, that would be much worse. It's for me. I mean, this was how I felt.
Sure.
And so I love what you said about that, because we know that a lot of times people don't tell their families when they're diagnosed, for various reasons. And, inadvertently exposing someone like that would be terrible.
Right. And there's also a disconnect in the language of medicine. So, Karen used the word, hypercholesterolemia, which just means you have
I
high
said high
cholesterol.
cholesterol too.
You did, but I'm just saying,
Okay.
but
I'm
that's
like,
what we
hey,
say.
hey,
No,
hey,
no, no.
hey.
I'm not trying to throw shade. I wasn't trying to throw you shade.
Girl, that's all
But
right.
what I was saying is like, sometimes the terms that we use in medicine that they just don't transfer. And so you may be
No.
trying to tell your family that you have something going on, and you just may not understand the terminology. So I think one of the things that's really important, because now everyone has access to their medical record, like mandated
Mhm.
by law,
Mhm.
you have access to your medical record. And so um, in Florida, I have a lot of patients that come and go out of state. And so I may not know where they will be next month. So I say, when you check out, ask for a copy of my last note.
Mhm.
And in the physician note, there's a list of medical problems. There's a list of things that's going on. So when you have these, family dinners or whatever, there may be someone in your family that can help decipher some of these things
Mhm.
and really help say like, oh, you know what? I didn't know you had high blood pressure. Oh, I didn't know you had a stroke before.
Mhm.
So I think everyone should get a copy of at least one note. If you just have an
Yeah.
annual physical, you know, maybe wait a couple of minutes and say, hey, can I just get a copy of that? So I have it for my record. So then, I can pass this on. That's one quick, easy way
Yeah.
to develop a family history chart.
Yes, and some health systems actually have the electronic portal as well so
Right.
that you can pull up your records. You can
Absolutely.
actually see your lab values, you can see doctor's notes, you can see the
Right.
results of imaging, and that actually is helpful as well. But it reminds me, Dr. Z, of a conversation that you were having as well about the fact that sometimes doctors like to hear themselves sound smart, right? And they
We
throw
do.
out all this terminology. But what I want to say is it's really, my hope is that our community will begin to feel empowered to ask questions, ask clarifying questions. Because I can tell you, I've sat in rooms with my trainees and they'll throw out medical terminology and I'll stop them and say, why don't you explain what that
Hmm.
is? But if, that's in my training zone, right? So, I can't tell you, how many times I'm sure there are patients who will sit there and go through an entire, consultation or visit with a clinician who may be speaking term and using terminology and they leave and they're not 100% sure. So to your point, I think it's really important for people to feel empowered and say, I'm sorry, doc, I'm not unsure. What was that word you
Right.
used? What does that mean? Especially if it's a new diagnosis, right? I mean, you know if you got the sugar, right? You know if you got diabetes because your doctors told you
You
that
got
you
the
need to
sugar
get you
diabetes.
got to get your
You,
glucose, you got to get sugar down,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
But there are other things that may not be so straightforward, and I think that's important.
And what if someone has passed away, right? And you're just not completely sure of what happened. And one thing that may be helpful is actually getting a death certificate. Because on a death certificate, it will say the immediate cause of death, and there may be other things that may have contributed um, to that. So that may be something else that is available
Hmm.
for you.
Speaking of when folks pass away, I didn't realize that you could do this, but I was able to get, so when my husband passed away, his records are his records. So I can't, for instance, go and check my daughter's records. I can't ask her doctor because it's confidential, right? But once someone passes away, whomever is the executor of the estate, whoever is the one who's handling the affairs can actually request the medical record. So that's another thing to do. And they actually will give it to you on a disc, and that's free. So do not have somebody tell you that you need to have them, they need to print out 1,000 pages or whatever and try to charge you for each of those pages because they will do that. You say, no, there's actually a law that says that if you ask for I think it's called high resolution copy of the records, they will put it on a CD for you, and then you will actually have an electronic copy of the records.
I didn't know that, Dr. Karen. Look at that. You are dropping
Yep.
nuggets. Dr. Tiffany, it's hard for me not to laugh as I'm looking at you on this screen. We're
She looking so
having a
cute.
serious conversation about family history, and
She's Bellatrix. It's not like she's a princess. She's hardcore.
she is
Right.
hardcore with
You
a
just
smile.
you can't see this because, like I said, my setup won't allow to give you the full regalia, but
Right. And so, we were talking about how sometimes depending on your family history, you may get screened for different things earlier.
Mhm.
mhm.
Yeah, that's
This
it.
is
I didn't say that.
even more important during COVID because actually, the community oncology group that I'm a part of, some of the people within that group just published a study that's shown during COVID, cancer screenings have dropped dramatically.
Mhm.
And this is really going to impact outcomes in cancer care. So if we don't know what we need to be screened for, and those things are already being delayed, it's really important. So I think right now there's really a sense of urgency
Yeah.
that, one, we have to know this information so we know that, what, COVID or no COVID, I need to keep up with my screenings because
Mhm.
I don't
Yes.
want to get diagnosed at a later
Mhm.
stage than I normally would, because COVID, it seems like it's going to be here with us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but can I speak to that just a little bit? Because there may be a
Speak
couple of
to it.
reasons why people are not getting screening. One is, the screening facilities were closed for a
Right.
short time, right?
They
So,
were.
Right.
when it came
Right.
Right,
to going to get your mammogram, for instance, they
right,
were like, "Sorry, shop is closed." But
right.
now, almost,
You're open.
The
they're
sh-
open.
the
So
shop is open.
go get your mammogram. Don't use that as an excuse. Number one.
Open for business.
Right. Same thing for
Yes.
colonoscopy. So gastroenterology, which is the type of doctor that does the endoscopy or the scoping, those are open as well. They do have very clear guidelines that are going to protect you and the staff around COVID. So does the mammogram. I had my mammogram done last month, and I tell you, they were very clear. Do you have any signs and symptoms? They check your temperature. Like, they wipe everything down. It's very
Right.
safe to go and get your screening. So
Mhm.
that's one thing, is that things were closed and now they're open. And so people need to recognize that. The other thing, though, there are a lot of people who lost their health insurance.
That is the big thing.
Now,
Or,
it doesn't account for it because they're talking about a
right,
70 to 80% drop in screening rates for some different types of cancer screening, right?
Yeah.
But so that doesn't account for all of it, but that does account for some. And that's
right,
why this is a challenge. And that's why it's actually a scary time right now when you think about the fact that the Affordable Care Act may be in jeopardy. Because, I mean, we know that afforded insurance to over 40 million, Americans, and there's a chance that can be reversed in a time where we need it most, right? There's so many people who don't have insurance right now. So I just want to mention that, but I do want to encourage people who do have insurance and have the ability to go and get their screening done. Please get it done if you are due for your cancer screening.
right. And Monica Lynn is saying that, her appointments were rescheduled. She had to wait about 3 months.
Wow.
And I mean, that really just
Yeah.
speaks to the impact that COVID had on medical care
Mhm.
in the
Yeah,
country.
that's what I was gonna say. I mean, Karen already said it, but yeah, places were closed anyway when this first
Hmm.
came out, you know. But
Mhm.
as you said, I think we're approaching almost like it's not a new normal, but it's a like, how are we gonna function with COVID for a
Right.
while?
We're living with COVID.
We're living with, yes, exactly right. And so, yeah, cancer screenings are back on for sure.
Yeah.
You know, what I, and you just mentioned it, Karen, you know, the loss of health insurance, but then layer that on top of the fact that people aren't getting screened and the real nervousness that there is about this in the
Yeah.
oncology community, like what we're going to see in terms of later diagnosis, like in the next few years, with a potential healthcare insurance, you know, crisis
Yes. And I
is
just want to
sobering for sure.
mention
So
something because, everybody's talking about the vaccine trials and all that kind of stuff. Let me tell you, I know Dr. Z and Dr. Tiff know this already, but I want to let our viewers know. I am currently on the NIH helping to lead one of their working groups on inclusive participation for the CEAL, the CEAL, which is a Community Engaged Alliance Against COVID-19 Disparities. And there are there's no vaccine ready that's ready. I mean, the test, the clinical trials are being done, but to Dr. Z's point, we have a long way to go before we get there. Now, there may be some miracle that miracle that happens in the next month or so where we may then be able to start to roll a vaccine, but this is not happening anytime soon. So we've got to make sure that we are not abrogating our responsibilities to our own health, right? Or
mm,
kind of reducing that. We still have to take care of ourselves,
Right.
in this COVID era. It's really important. And again, doctors' offices, radiology offices, they're really taking care to make sure that you're protected and that they're protected. So please do not forsake your own health during this time.
and tell a friend because oh, hey Tanya. Yeah, COVID numbers are going up. Yeah, absolutely. Tell a friend because we've done a lot of speaking right this month, all of us individually and together for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And,
Right.
you know, every panel that I have done this month where we have talked about this, someone has always said, more than one person, several people have said that they were putting off their mammograms because of COVID, and hearing the information, they were going to go ahead and get their mammograms scheduled, you know, for this year because they had been putting it off. So we see it again, we see it in the numbers and we see it in the papers, but also I think we've all heard this as we've kind of interacted with people this month a lot for Breast
Right.
Cancer Awareness Month, that indeed, yes, a lot of people did have a lot of fear around continuing with their screening. So, you know, if you hear this, pass it on
Mhm.
that your
Absolutely.
family and friends should be getting their screenings.
Absolutely. And so, I feel like in our community, there's always the quote, you know where you come from, know where you come from so you know where you're going. Right? And so you want to know about the people behind you. And usually when you think about it, I like to think about it in terms of, the people who allowed me to be where I am today, right? So the civil rights leaders and all the people who stood up, and the suffragists and all these people who did all these great things so that we can sit and have and do exactly what we're doing right now.
Did she say
And
suffragists? She
I
did
did
say
say the
suffragists.
suffragists,
She
right?
did
So
say
so all these people, right?
Suffragists.
I'll
But
allow it.
in
Go
turn,
ahead.
Go vote. Go
follow
vote,
me,
y'all. Okay,
follow
go ahead.
me,
I'm
follow
sorry.
me. It's a winding path, but I'm going to get there. It's a
You're gonna get
winding
there. Go
path. I'm
ahead.
going to
Go
get there.
ahead.
But it's the same thing with your health, right? We don't really think about that in terms of health. We think about that in terms of everything else, right? We know the people who came before us with voting. We know our parents and the things that they did, but really your health history is honestly just as important. Like if you don't know what the people in your family had. So what I'm hoping is by the end of 2020, right? That you will know what the people in your first and possibly even second degree, you know what they had, you know what maybe they died from if they have died. Like let's make that a goal. We will for Thanksgiving learn our family histories. So Dr. Karen, do um you know the medical histories of your parents, brothers, sisters?
Up to a point.
Yeah,
Remember, my family
right,
disowned me a long time ago. I was too much of a rebel, and so I haven't had that much contact with my family. But I do. My dad had renal cell carcinoma, so I do know that. So he had a kidney cancer. I know that there's diabetes in my family. There's high blood pressure. There's cardiovascular disease. So those are the ones that I know of. Autoimmune stuff is like crazy. So Sjogren's syndrome.
uh,
So don't forget about these autoimmune diseases because they
right.
actually disproportionately impact Black folks. Okay,
Mhm.
Can you
lupus, right? What
repeat
about
that for
that?
the people in the back?
What are
And
people in
what
the
are
back?
For
autoimmune
the people
So
diseases,
in the bar.
Dr.
autoimmune
Karen?
diseases, yes, autoimmune diseases are diseases where your body actually doesn't recognize itself. All right. I know it sounds weird. Remember the antibodies. You know how like you go and you get your flu shot, it gets your antibodies all revved up, those proteins that go and they fight against other things. Sometimes those proteins will look at a part of your body and think it's foreign. So for instance, my daughter has alopecia. And alopecia is an autoimmune disorder where her body thinks that her hair follicles are foreign. And so it attacks them and then the hair falls out. Okay. So some of you may have seen that where you get little patches. My daughter has complete alopecia universalis, right? Or totalis at this point. So bottom line is, excuse me, autoimmune diseases are those where your host immune system, what's supposed to be defending against all those other bad things, sees parts of itself as kind of the bad things. And so lupus is an example. Arthritis, so rheumatoid
Right,
arthritis is another example, and these disproportionately impact Black folks. So we're not just talking about cancer here. We're talking about
right,
understanding all of the medical problems. And I tell you, so we have really bad eczema in my family,
right.
really bad asthma. Mine is flaring now as I get older, which is cray, right? But
Mhm,
all of this atopic dermatitis and that kind of
mhm,
triad is actually predisposes folks for having something like alopecia. Now, fortunately, there's not a lot of that in my family, but there's a lot of these autoimmune disorders, including something like Sjogren's syndrome, which tends to affect the salivary glands in the eyes and it makes people like
mhm,
dry, right? So,
mhm,
and Raynaud's actually where your hands, like I have Raynaud's where I can't be in the cold for too long because the tips of my fingers actually go blue, right?
Mhm.
So those are different types of disorders. What about you, Tiff? Do you have family history that you know
Oh,
of?
cancer, cancer, cancer in my family,
Mhm.
which might be part of why I was drawn to oncology. So yeah, there's cancer in multiple members of my family on both sides, um, different types as well. Um, the triad you talked about, allergies, asthma, eczema, big time. In one side of my family, which I was also the beneficiary there. So I have terrible asthma, allergies, eczema
Mhm.
as well. Heart disease, but I don't know how much heart disease is family now as much as like our lifestyle, our
Lifestyle.
American lifestyle. But that's another that's
That's a
another
whole
story for
other.
another day
Don't
after I pass
don't
my
get started with
lifestyle
that. Yeah,
medicines.
we're not going to even get you started with
Give me
that.
another week.
Mm.
So, but that brings up a point because some cancers, so you heard me say, oh, I have cancer all over my family, but some cancers run together in terms of making it more likely or raising our suspicion that there might be something genetic in the family, right? So, if you have some of the cancers in your family that kind of run together, um, those would be breast, ovarian, prostate, pancreatic,
pancreatic. Mhm,
and in some cases melanoma. So if you're sitting around and you're like, now the other thing is we use euphemisms, right? So people will say, oh, she had woman's,
She had lady
yeah,
part cancer.
she had female cancer,
Female
something,
cancer.
you
female
know,
cancer.
woman's
Yeah.
issue stuff.
Ah,
Yeah.
Well, actually, you need to know what stuff because
Right.
breast and
Is it
ovarian
ovarian?
it's
Is it
different, right? It's
cervical?
and
yeah, they're
from
different. Yeah,
uterine stuff is different
right,
from cervical stuff.
right,
Right.
Okay,
right.
so breast
Would you say
ovarian,
that one more time for the people in the back?
I'll say it again. Breast and ovarian running together makes us think of one thing. Okay, uterine running with colorectal in a family makes us think of
Or
something
colon cancer or rectal
else, colorectal
cancer?
cancer.
Hmm.
And cervical cancer is something else, right? Caused by a
Completely.
virus, HPV, which we've talked about. Tune into our podcast. So you need to know as much as you can. Now, sometimes if you're going back to your grandmother or your great grandmother, you might not
Mhm,
know.
Right.
mhm,
She just had woman something or other.
mhm.
But now that we know better, right, with the people who are still around, we're going to be very specific about what it is
Which
we're
part?
going through.
Know
And
the
we're not
parts.
going to say, oh, it's lady parts. Which part?
We're not going to say lady parts. And we're not going to
Yeah,
say
body
nasty
parts.
women's
And
diseases,
we say
Tanya.
which parts
We are
we
not
are
going to say
referring
that, Tanya.
Okay. So
to. Okay?
so
Use the
so
right terminology. Let me just get on my
Tanya
soapbox.
is a trip.
Use the right terminology with your kids, please.
Oh boy.
Okay? Start
Oh,
early. None of this wee and all that, whatever people teach. So, we were getting in the car one day.
oh.
Oh, I froze.
This is a sidebar for real. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I froze. Somebody was surprised one day when my son used the proper term for his genitals. And I was like, well, what do you think I'm going to call it? He's going to know proper body parts, the names. Okay.
Oh,
Right.
that's
And be real
hysterical.
clear
So
because
Yes,
if,
yes.
right.
that's from now on in 2020.
Henceforth
Let's
and forevermore.
what parts are we talking about? Are we talking about
Parts.
breast and ovarian running together with pancreatic, prostate, and melanoma? Are we talking about uterine running with colon or colorectal cancers? Or are we talking about cervical? All
Yeah.
right. And so if you start talking and you hear these things running together, oh, this person had breast, and then this person had, ovarian, and then I think they had pancreatic or something. This is stuff that should make you bring this to your
Bing.
doctor. Okay.
Mhm.
Right.
These sorts
Yeah.
of things. If
Yeah.
you hear, oh, somebody colon now, right, is all in our consciousness. If you
And
start thinking, and it's like, oh, we had colon, but then we had uterine or lady parts or something, just things to bring up to your doctor about what's going on in your family, right?
right. And Tiffany brought up the basically what are the things that kind of, are red flags, as we say. So
Right.
if you're diagnosed with cancer at an early age,
Yes.
or you have an early age. I think Karen mentioned about her friend who was diagnosed with very hard to control blood pressure at 29, right?
Mm.
That's unusual. That's not a disease that you usually see in a 29-year-old. That will kind of raise a red flag for us. Specifically for cancer, if you have more than one cancer in your own body, that sometimes will raise a red flag for us. And then like Tiffany was saying, the family history. Monica in the chat room has brought up something that I wanted to comment on, and she was saying that her daughter has two
Mm.
autoimmune diseases, and one of those was celiac disease.
Mhm.
And the reason why this is important for her to know, this is when you have a gluten insensitivity. So basically, gluten is throughout
It's
all kinds of
everywhere.
foods.
It's
It's everywhere. I
everywhere.
mean, it is the life breads, everything, right? And commonly we were taught in medical school that this was a primarily disease not among black
Yeah, it was
people.
white. Mhm. Mm.
It was in white people. So
Mhm.
if Monica came in and said, uh, she eats these foods, she has diarrhea or has some GI upset and what's going on, a physician may not necessarily think to check for celiac disease. So it's really important to
Mhm.
know that really there are no racial diseases, right? You can be at risk for anything. And so, we know how to treat celiac disease.
Mhm. But to that point, Dr. Z, this is where we as a community have got to make sure that we are advocating for ourselves and feel empowered, because I can't, we've had
Absolutely.
conversations with patients, right, who've had symptoms. We've had
Absolutely.
20-something-year-olds who have a lump in their breast and are told, oh, it's nothing. And it turns out it's triple negative breast cancer, right? So
Absolutely.
you know your body, have those conversations with your doctors.
Right. And it's so important. So Monica's saying she had to fight. And I
Mm,
absolutely believe
mm,
that for her daughter to get a diagnosis of
mhm,
celiac disease, she had
mhm.
to fight.
Go through some
And so
conniptions.
right. And so also there's something called, I think that she also said eosinophilic esophagitis,
Mhm.
right? This is an incredibly rare disorder.
Rare,
Yeah.
And
rare.
it actually be it's rare, but I think we're recognizing it more. And
Yeah,
so I think Monica, I want to applaud you for fighting for your daughter.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, because it affects your quality of life. And I must say,
Absolutely.
I just want to point out one other thing. And I know Tiff was talking about a lot of cancer stuff. Yes, we are oncologists, but obviously we're talking about a lot of different things. One of the other thing that runs in my family, and I think we need to talk about this, it's really important, is mental health.
Mhm.
So mental health
Yes.
disorders run in my family. And you know how I found out? My cousin told me. Like, I knew my brother had a little something going on, but my cousin also does, right? And the fact of the matter is if we had talked about it, my brother was self-medicating. My brother died at age 50, right? 50 years old, 50, because he actually had mental illness that led him to self-medicate. And
Mhm.
his medication of choice was alcohol, led to liver disease, like early liver disease, cardiovascular disease, the whole nine, right? He passed away. But let me tell you something. Had we been having those conversations as a family about the fact that apparently my grandfather had a little bit of schizophrenia, my cousin, like my brother, this would have potentially prompted to be able to go and get some early treatment, right? And
Right.
I know mental health is tough for our community. It's really tough in the Black
Right.
community to have these conversations on mental health. But remember, we had Dr. Erica Drasa, who was on here. She
Hmm.
was like one of our highest, like we had more watches with Dr. Erica because people are stressed right now with COVID.
Right.
And I think if you have a history of mental illness, so depression, anxiety, schizophrenia is paranoia, whatever it is, if you know you have a family history of it, then you can do what you need to do to protect yourself during this really critical time of isolation and all that sort of thing. So I just wanted to bring that up because and I'm grateful for Monica bringing up her story with her daughter and the fact that there's a fight, and it sometimes can be a fight for us too, even just to kind of think about mental health. And we have some resources. Make sure you check on Facebook. There are some resources. And I think associated attached with the podcast that we did on mental health, there are a couple of resources there for free counseling for Blacks, by Black providers. And I tell you, don't forsake that now. I just had to bring that up.
No, I'm so happy you brought this up because I mean, it's an illness,
Mhm.
right? And it really should be treated as such. And the more we know, the more we can help support our family members because I think we all know people in our family and we say, "Oh, they just crazy." You did, and you just kind of laugh it off, shrug it off, and we really don't deal with it. And we know even this week, I mean, I didn't want to necessarily bring it up, but with the shooting that happened in Philadelphia, I mean, it was, it's
Mhm.
it's it's um it's really sad. So yeah, I agree, Karen. I mean, it's incredibly important. It
Monica, you're a
is.
trip. She's like, our family just say,
Uncle
Uncle
Joe
Joe's
is a
a
special
special bird.
bird. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Bill
don't worry about
Gates.
Uncle.
You
Yeah, no,
know, yes.
Mhm.
But Karen, what you said was also a really important point about substance abuse, and addiction, and whether that
right.
runs in your family. That's really important information to have too for when you are thinking about yourself, right? And the ways that you handle stress
Mm.
and the things that you do. But then also that's information for your kids, and if you have addictions that run in your family, then your kids need to know that too. Like when they're old enough to say, hey, look, this is in the family. And so as you become of age and you start making
Making
decisions about
decisions.
alcohol,
Yeah.
um, you need to be very aware of this, that
Right.
this is what's going on. And we've got this in the family. I am very aware around alcohol, right? I don't actually drink when I'm sad, depressed. Like, usually I only drink if I'm in a good mood, like if everything is okay. For me, if I'm like really down or whatever, and I think you guys have seen that too, I won't drink, because it's like I don't want to associate any kind of like this is an outlet for me to like lift my
Mhm.
spirits.
Wow.
Um,
I didn't know
I
that.
don't. Yeah, no, I
She
don't. I don't drink. I
Hmm.
don't like to drink when I'm stressed. Like that habit of like, oh, I was so stressed at work, I'm gonna come home and get a glass of wine. Mm-mm. I don't like that either.
I'll take that glass of wine.
Well,
But yes, no, I understand your rationale.
no, but,
You know,
I
take
just
my
try to
glass of
be
Say
wine.
to each
very.
his own.
No, I
Mhm.
just try to be very aware that
Yes,
Right.
I
because
do
family
enjoy
history.
cocktails. I do enjoy alcohol, but I enjoy it when I'm in a mood for it and not in
Yeah,
a to relieve stress or to
yeah.
relieve depression
Right.
or sadness or any of those things. You know.
Right. Right. And you all know, I mean, that's precisely why I don't at all, because I think that I could easily have those tendencies, And so, you okay? What's happening?
What's that?
Lestrange over there? What is
Bellatrix
going
is
I'm
on?
having a
sorry.
she's having a
I
special moment.
for one time I have my comments on. This is like I finally did it while we were and I
Oh,
saw
did you see
Oh my
Tanya's
God! You saw
comment
Tanya's
about, they
comment?
always get a
I
check?
said, they get a check.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lord.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Okay, sorry. I was really about to choke. Okay.
E- e-
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead, Z.
Continue.
uh, Girl, okay.
She's like,
So
I don't even know where I was.
I know, dementia run in the family too. So
Well,
no, I was just going to say, I've said it before that addiction, particularly alcohol addiction,
yeah.
runs in my family. And so,
Yeah.
because of some of the things that I've seen, I, I made a conscious choice. And actually, I remember when I was really young that I just didn't like the way certain things looked.
Mhm.
And I remembered that I didn't want to be like that.
Oh, you
Mhm.
And
mean like
so,
being drunk looked?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
That was like a drink. No.
Yeah, no, 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 it just wasn't a drink. It
Yeah.
was a drunk
Yeah.
look.
I gotcha. Yeah.
There were police.
Yeah.
It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I was probably around 7, 8,
Mm.
Hmm.
and I was like, that was just not a look that I wanted.
Not for you. Yeah.
It was not for me.
But I think again, I think it's important to recognize that there are some folks who utilize alcohol or utilize other substances to self-medicate. So
Yeah.
again, back to the point
Yep.
of knowing the self-history, right? I mean, I'm knowing the family history because it may indeed be that it's one syndrome that's masking another.
Hmm.
You
So,
are exactly right, Karen. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Oh man, this was a good talk. So just to summarize about the family during Thanksgiving, y'all are going to get together. You're going to talk about your family histories. If you need a form, we'll provide a form for you. You know, you really want to try to have those difficult conversations if you can with your family. We are not going to forsake our cancer screenings.
Yes.
And what do we hope for November? I think I may ask some of the people, Monica, Tanya, anyone in our chat room, what do you hope for November? Since January, February, March, April,
mhm.
May, June, July,
Lord,
August, September,
have been
and
how
October
does
have been awful.
okay, so wait,
I
wait. Can we preface the whole November conversation with saying if y'all haven't voted,
voted.
Preface it.
please make sure you get out there and do your business. All right, please, please. November is that needs to be front and center on everybody's mind. But now we can talk about what y'all hope and pray for in November and what that might change. What about you, Z? What is it that you're looking for in November? What would you like to see?
You know what? I'll be honest. I just want a drama-free month.
Mm,
I
Amen.
would like to have a month where we have a live, where everything is not just one disaster after the next disaster after the next disaster. And we didn't even talk about the hurricanes that are like pummeling Louisiana.
Pummeling, pummeling.
They are terrorizing the poor state of Louisiana.
Didn't even get there. Or how I was texting with folks in New Orleans on Wednesday because their power had gone out. So I was giving them the radar updates of when the storm should be finished. Then Thursday I woke up and the storm was in my backyard. I was like, what? What happened here? So once again, 2020.
Crazy.
2020. So Tanya wants us to have a talk in November for young people interested in medicine.
Okay.
Yeah.
You sure need the group for that, T? We'll discuss offline.
Well, but this is actually timely considering that as of November 1, I'm going to be on faculty at Meharry Medical Center.
That's true. So it's very timely. Very timely.
Harry.
Meharry. Yes, HBCU. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Okay. So Ashley says open enrollment for health insurance starts November 1. Yes. Okay. This is good. And that's important because for people who may have lost their insurance, right, or have had a change in circumstance, that's important. Make sure you go ahead and get it done. I think it's the same for Medicare as well. So it's not just Medicare, it's the Affordable Care Act. So now's the time. Folks on their jobs are probably already getting notices about making selections for your benefits if benefits come with your.
Oh my goodness, I need to go through my emails. Thinking of.
Yes.
Get my insurance life together.
So we could have a discussion about careers. That would be very interesting. In career choices, since we all have done very interesting things with our careers, but also talk a little bit about how folks who are interested. We need workforce diversity. We definitely do, right?
Okay, 2 former students at Meharry.
Who said that? What happened?
Tanya.
Okay, very good.
No,
very good.
I love Meharry.
Yes. Trust me, I had many a conversation with Dr. Z about before I took this job. It's really important to me to be able to give back to HBCUs, and I'm very grateful. This would be a wonderful experience. I'm looking forward to it. So, yeah. Cool. Well, let's see. What else in the chat box? You see, I have my glasses on. I'm trying to be cute tonight.
What are you looking for November?
Completely out of character. I'm hoping for good Hallmark Christmas movies because that is what I will be watching from the election return night, probably for like a week. I have to check out. So I don't watch Hallmark Christmas movies in a normal time.
But I saw some that may be interesting. I saw one with like Kelly Rowland.
I don't know.
I've seen some commercials.
I need something cheery and unrealistic.
Yes, cheery. I'm hoping that my closing actually happens on the date that I selected for my new place in Nashville. That's what I'm hoping. So I just don't want to have too many delays because I'd like to just go ahead and try to get settled in because I'm already going to be a month after starting my job before I have a place in Nashville. So that'd be cool.
The pandemic move.
It's going to be a hot mess, but that's okay. I'm not taking a darn thing. I'm not going to have people coming to my house. I'm just going to get down there and like buy all new stuff. I know it's kind of ridiculous, but that's what Rooms to Go is for. Ashley Furniture. Sponsorship.
Yeah. You can get a room of furniture.
There you go.
So I also moved during the pandemic. And so, I want to paint. I don't feel like painting because, you have to have lots of people in the house. But then I also wanted to get rid of my old furniture. So I went ahead and got rid of the old furniture. And my daughter the other day said, "Mommy, can we get a couch?" So needless to say, the poor child is like begging for a couch. So hopefully we'll get get that together. So
no, thanks, Lisa. My cousin is welcoming you to Tennessee.
Oh, hey girl, hey, where are you? Lisa, go ahead and put it in there. I need to connect with you.
That's right. She just moved there. Not too long.
Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville, Memphis.
Wait, you're in Nashville.
I'm going to be in Nashville.
Yeah, because I kept getting the two of you confused. So every time I would talk to her, I'm like, "How's your move going to?" And she's like, "No," and I'm like, "Okay."
Oh, that's
talking about Tennessee at the same time is too much for my brain to.
Yeah.
She's outside of Memphis.
She's outside of Memphis. Okay, so I'm going from purple purplish red state to a very red state. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Because I'm all about the policy piece. So I'm going
Right.
to put my foot in Tennessee
Need
policy.
you
Put
there.
Right.
it in there. Put it in
Join
there.
But you're in a nice enclave. You're in a nice enclave. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so hopefully November, we will see what
my
November
birthday month. Woo,
brings
woo.
us. It is Tiffany's birthday month.
Okay.
I and we will celebrate accordingly via Zoom.
Okay. And so, what
All
are our
right.
takeaways? We got 2 seconds left. What are our takeaways
Take the,
again?
the takeaways are, know
I
your
forgot.
family
No,
history.
yes.
Get screened, understand mental health, and that's also an illness. So include that in your family history. Make sure you go vote if you have not voted, and continue to listen to Three Black Docs. We are
Yes.
growing, and tell your friends about us.
Mhm.
And we will see you soon,
Podcast drops every Tuesday.
every Tuesday.
All
All
right,
right.
y'all.
Thanks.
Tuesday. Happy
Have a
Halloween.
good night, everybody.